When rescuers found the dog, he was sitting by the cliff. Didn't bark. Didn't move. Wet fur, cut paw, eyes wary, like he was guarding someone's territory. Below, in a crevice, they found scraps of clothing and blood. The footprints made it clear that a man had been here. His footsteps had led this way. Claw marks led back. Later they'd say it was a mistake. But then he just heard the barking. And he went to save him. The tent stood on a patch of flattened grass near the edge of a clearing, where the trees thinned just enough to let the sun reach the forest floor. Smoke from a fire curled lazily into the air. Tom sat cross-legged by the pit, poking at the embers with a stick. His wife read beside him, and their son napped inside the tent. Jack, their gray and white Leica, lay alert at the perimeter, ears flicking at every rustle. Lunch was finished. The smell of grilled sausage lingered in the warm breeze. Jack rose suddenly, ears perked, head turning toward the tree lean. In an instant, he was on his feet and trotting away, slipping silently between trees. Tom called after him once, casually. No response. He stood, hands on hips, waiting for the familiar return of panting and paws on dirt. But the minutes passed. The woods remained quiet. From behind him, a voice, quiet, tired, warned that the light was beginning to fade. Tom waved it off. 5 minutes, he muttered, almost to himself. He didn't grab his jacket. The warmth of the afternoon hadn't yet left, and it wasn't supposed to rain. He slipped on his shoes, already damp at the soles, and walked into the woods, leaving the soft clatter of dishes behind him. The forest swallowed him quickly. The air grew cooler and thick with moisture. The sun, though still above the horizon, couldn't reach past the canopy. Leaves hung heavy with dew. Somewhere ahead, faint and muffled, came a single bark. He turned toward it, quickened his pace. Another bark, this one fainter, as if absorbed by the wetness of the ground and the trees. He veered off the barely visible trail, choosing a shortcut he remembered from earlier that morning. The soil beneath his feet turned slick, the moss slicker. He stepped onto a slanted rock, slipped slightly, caught his balance. His shoes weren't built for this. Water seeped in. He kept going. He told himself it was only 5 minutes. But the woods had already begun to close in. The trail thinned until it disappeared entirely, consumed by layers of moss and tangled roots that glistened with moisture. Tom pressed forward through the underbrush, his hands pushing branches aside as they clawed at his face and jacket. Ferns brushed his legs. The forest felt older here, darker, heavier, as if it had forgotten people ever passed through. Ahead, a sudden bark cut through the silence. It was sharp and high-pitched, unlike the others. This wasn't playful or alert, it was panicked. Tom stopped, eyes wide, heart catching, then surged forward. The terrain shifted beneath his feet, mud gripping at his shoes, pulling, as if trying to slow him down. He reached a dense cluster of shrubs and caught a flash of something pale snagged on a branch. He bent closer. A tuft of fur, soft, damp, white mottled with gray. He held it between 2 fingers. Too soft for Jack. It lacked the coarse texture he knew so well. It could have belonged to a deer. Or something else. Branches snapped deeper in the woods. A single, heavy crack. Something large had moved. Tom raised his voice and called, his tone sharper now, but the sound only scattered into the trees. Nothing answered. His chest tightened. He hadn't realized how fast he was breathing. He stopped. Sweat mixed with the mist on his forehead. He checked his watch. 40 minutes. He hadn't meant to be gone more than 5. The campsite was far behind now, swallowed by trees he no longer recognized. Going back meant retracing steps he hadn't marked. Then, something shifted behind him. A soft rustle. A weight to it, just enough to register as real. He turned slowly, his breath held tight in his throat. Nothing. Just the stillness. A gray fog curled low along the ground, thickening with the coming evening. The forest was quiet again, but the quiet no longer felt empty. He paused near a cluster of spruce trees, something catching his eye on the trunk just ahead. The bark had been peeled back in 4 deep vertical gouges, each spaced like fingers, but far too wide. They glistened slightly, the exposed wood still damp, sap bleeding from the wounds. The edges were sharp, not yet dulled by rain or time. Whatever had made them had done so recently, very recently. The sight rooted him in place. A ripple of unease spread across his chest. He felt it low and cold, like water soaking into skin. He called out again, louder now, voice cracking with something that hadn't been there before. He waited. Still nothing. He turned slightly, considering the way back, when a bark rang out again, closer this time. Urgent. Afraid. He broke into a half-run toward the sound and came upon Jack crouched beneath a downed log. The dog trembled, tail low, body tense. He wasn't hurt, but he wasn't moving either. His gaze was fixed, not on Tom, but beyond him, into the trees. Not barking now. Just staring. A sudden crunch came from the underbrush, like weight shifting on old branches. Jack bolted. No hesitation, no glance back. He vanished into the thick, the sound of his paws swallowed almost instantly. Tom turned, breath catching in his throat. Between the trunks, deeper in the gloom, something moved. A shape. Broad shoulders, a low center of mass. It didn't make a sound. It didn't need to. It simply stood there, half obscured by the tangle of limbs and shade, as if it had been watching long before Tom had arrived. He stepped backward, eyes locked on the spot where the figure had been. The ground sloped. His heel caught on a root slick with moss. He stumbled, arms flailing for balance. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, louder than the wind, louder than his breath, loud enough to mask whatever else might have been creeping closer. She emerged from the undergrowth without sound, a wall of fur and muscle sliding through the green like water through reeds. Her eyes fixed on Tom instantly, not with rage but with something colder, more calculated. She didn't growl. She didn't move fast. She simply stood there, watching, her massive head held low. Her breath misted in the cool air, steady and calm. There was no noise in the forest now, only the hush of branches and the weight of her presence. Behind her, a smaller figure stumbled into view, a cub, no older than a season. It clung close to her side, then peered around her leg with uncertain eyes. The moment crystallized. Tom knew what this was. It wasn't a chance meeting with wildlife. It was a boundary crossed. The cub shifted everything. He was no longer a hiker. He was a threat. He took a single step back, his hands half raised. One step was enough. The bear moved without warning. A low, rolling advance, her limbs silent against the damp ground. No theatrics, no display, just raw intention. Her body was built to cover distance quickly, and she began to do just that. Her head dipped, her shoulders flexed. There was no question in her gaze. No mercy. No hesitation. Only instinct, sharpened by generations, triggered by the nearness of her young. Tom turned and ran. His foot caught a root, and he pitched forward, catching himself on both hands. Mud smeared his palms and knees. He staggered up and bolted, crashing through the brush, lungs burning from the sudden panic. He didn't scream out of pain, but from something deeper, older, the pure, uncontrollable horror of being hunted. He ran blindly, crashing through the forest without thought for direction or footing. Every branch seemed to grab at him, every rock aimed to twist his ankle. Somewhere to his left, Jack's collar jingled, then vanished into the distance. Tom didn't follow. He couldn't see. The bear was behind him. He felt it, more than heard it, a dense, terrible silence that followed with weight and purpose. The woods were too narrow. No space. No path. Just trees and breath and inevitability. The ground vanished beneath him. A slope masked by wet leaves gave way under his feet. He fell, his arms windmilling for balance before he tumbled down through clay and stone and moss. He hit a root with his hip, rolled once, then landed hard on his side. His ankle twisted beneath him at a brutal angle. Pain shot through him, white and immediate. He tried to move, but the ground was slick and the slope was steep. He slid a few more feet before coming to rest in a shallow ditch, half concealed by brambles and shadow. He lay still, breath ragged, ribs aching. The sound of movement above him grew louder. Heavy steps. Slow. She had followed. He didn't see her, not yet, but he heard her breathing. It was close, impossibly close. Not the deep roar of aggression, but something quieter. Focused. Predatory. A rhythm of breath that didn't match his own. He forced himself to stay still, even as his body screamed to move. His hand found the knife at his belt and drew it with trembling fingers. It felt ridiculous in his hand. A thin piece of metal against what was coming. Still, he held it. Not to fight, but because it was the only thing left between him and nothing. The bear didn't lunge. She stepped to the edge of the slope and stopped. Her head turned slightly as she sniffed the air. She moved slowly, circling above him, not with rage but with unsettling patience. She wasn't driven by fury. She was thinking, as much as a bear could. She was reading the scene. Was he still a threat? Was he dying? Was he too close? Tom tried to speak, but the words stuck. Nothing human would matter now. She didn't understand pleading. She didn't respond to fear. The rules here belonged to her. She moved closer, one paw at a time, brushing aside branches with casual strength. The earth trembled slightly beneath her. He closed his eyes. The last thing he felt wasn't teeth or claws but warmth, an immense, living presence that filled the space around him. Then everything went still. The sound left. The pain disappeared. The forest returned to silence. The next day, a thin dog appeared near the trailhead. Covered in dirt, limping on one leg, Jack limped out of the trees and collapsed near the road. A passing ranger spotted him and called it in. Within hours, a search team entered the woods. The dog wouldn't leave one spot. He circled, growled low, snapped at the air when rescuers came too close. He whimpered and paced and stared at the same patch of brush again and again, until finally they pushed through the thick growth and looked down. At the bottom of the slope, they found torn fabric, a boot twisted beneath leaves, a red smear across stone. Nearby were marks in the dirt, wide, uneven gashes where claws had sunk into the clay. There was no movement. No body. Just signs. Just aftermath. Later that week, the wife came to collect the dog. She didn't cry. She held the collar, turning it over in her hands. The metal tag clinked once against her palm. Wind moved through the evergreens above her head. The forest said nothing. That evening, a camper near the ridge saw a dog sitting at the edge of a drop. Quiet, still, watching the trees. When the wind changed, the dog let out one short bark. Not frantic. Not afraid. Just one. As if to say, it's still here. Don't follow.